My back is really not good this morning, and saying good morning that loudly has done something. Hi, how are you? Welcome to Backchannel. It's just after 9 here on the West Coast. This is California speaking. I'm Anthony Davis. Welcome to the Anthony Davis Show. You have me for a couple of hours. We're going to talk about the news and the views on the news. So you can join in. Just wake up your device, say the usual word, which is whatever your activation word is, followed by say, then your message. That's how we do it. Easy. Backchannel really is the only place you can listen to and watch and chat with hosts of live shows right here on your device. So if you want to get in touch, you can also message via the, we have a little web chat facility. Just go to backchannel.tv and you can communicate there as well. And we're also streaming on YouTube, and the comment section works there as well. So loads of ways to get in touch. Today we're going to be looking at the year in which, since Donald Trump's mob stormed the White House. I love the fact they said they weren't his mob, and yet they were all wearing MAGA hats, carrying Trump flags. It's like, we asked some important questions as to how involved the White House was organizing the January 6th rally, and why was the military and security response to the attack delayed? Why were they told to stand down and stand by? Interesting. I'm crossing two stories there, you see. It's like a kind of Proud Boys gag, tragically. A trucker sentenced to 110 years in prison in Colorado for a fatal accident that killed 4 people. We're going to take a look at that story and ask, was the sentence fair? Or should clemency have been used? The hashtag No Trucks to Colorado is trending on social media, as many truckers say they'll not have enough, they'll not travel through Colorado as a result of what they believe to be an extreme sentence. And also Biden's Omicron speech. It was a reaction to Omicron, really. The president spoke at a critical moment, but persuading a weary, divided public to steel itself against the latest variant will be a struggle, and some of his announcements I thought were a little too little and too late. In some cases, offering free test kits for home, a year too late. A year too late. We'll find out which American inventor and business person invented Christmas lights. So all that to come here on The Big Show. You're welcome to join in. As I said, I'm going to whiz through the morning papers, see what the big stories are making the headlines. And you can, of course, add your comments in the usual way via our chat. Just talk to your device, your Echo speaker or your Echo Show, whatever you've got going on there. New York Times is first on the list. Biden's plan for Omicron, testing but no lockdowns. Interesting. It says the dread was familiar as news spread of the latest coronavirus surge, fueled by the Omicron variant. It says that parents faced a return to the drudgery of school through a screen, childcare crises, and relentless young bodies penned inside for the winter. Well, not necessarily. I mean, look, until they get that last percentage of people vaccinated, right, this thing's not going to go away, is it? So really, he should have aimed his entire speech at those people. Because I think the people that are vaccinated and taking it very seriously are just like, they're already on board. You don't really have to do much to that lot to kind of get their attention. But it's everybody else. My racist conspiracy theory landlord introduced me to a new tenant, and I went to shake his hand and I said, "Are you vaccinated?" And he said no, and my landlord literally shouted at him and said, "Don't get vaccinated," to the new tenant who just moved in. Don't get vaccinated. The whole thing's a conspiracy. I thought, what a welcome to the neighborhood. Jeff, good morning. Alicia, good morning. Family, good morning. Jeff's in Arizona. Alicia's in Nevada. Where's Princess? Princess was there briefly and disappeared. She's in Florida. But welcome, wherever you are. I'm in California. Everyone's welcome, no rules. So it says in Manhattan, Olivia Strong received an email from her son's public middle school on Monday informing her that his cohort of 8th graders would transition to remote learning because of multiple positive virus cases. She said, "I was not even surprised. I fully expected it. Sighing deeply her hope, she added, was that a short break to reset would allow schools to reopen more safely in the new year. Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, it's about getting kids vaccinated, isn't it? You know? Do you know in Israel, yesterday, they started doing fourth shots. Fourth shots. Because Israel was like the first country to do vaccination. So it's kind of ahead of the game. It's often ahead of the game with pharmaceuticals. They're very advanced. But they were the first country to start doing fourth shots for over 60s, actually. And as I've said, this is why we shouldn't call the third shot the booster, because it's just a third shot. We're going to get a fourth shot and a fifth shot and a sixth shot, and that's just how it's going to go. And so I think we need to recognize that we are in this for the long term. That's what I think. Prickly Russia cultivates military mindset on the front of the New York Times this morning. It says, stepping onto a podium in heavy boots and military fatigues at a ceremony outside Moscow, 6 teenagers accepted awards for an increasingly important discipline in Russia: patriotism. Yes, for days, students from around the country have competed in activities like map reading, shooting, and history quizzes. The contest was funded in part by the Kremlin, which has been making military patriotic education a priority. Sounds familiar? Also, retired colonel pushes story of voting plots. Oh, who's this? Oh, it's Phil Wardren, yes. It says a few days after President Biden's inauguration put to rest one of the most chaotic transitions. It was so chaotic. It's just so embarrassing to think about that. Trump just left begrudgingly. I actually watched his concession speech yesterday as a reminder of what he said. And he went, frankly, we did win. And the room went mad. Frankly, we did win. Can you just think about that logically for a second? The president who just lost by 7 million votes comes out and goes, this is the greatest fraud in our country. And frankly, we did win. And they all go mad for it. I think the mindset is once you say the lie out loud, it then becomes true because you've said it out loud. If it's in your head, then it kind of still remains like just a theory. Say it out loud becomes a thing. And then if you say it out loud, your supporters will repeat it. He knows that. There was an interview yesterday that I tweeted a clip of, and he goes, the thing is, you know, he says the quiet bits out loud. This is what's so funny to me. Like, he says the quiet stuff that you're supposed to, not announce. He was interviewed, and he said, the thing is, these Democrats, they're trying to do this thing called voting rights. And if they do that, well, Republicans will never get in ever again. He actually said that out loud. The guy just has no inner monologue. There's no censorship. It's very interesting to me. I mean, I find him utterly fascinating. And the tragedy is, I don't agree with a lot of his politics, but I could literally talk about this guy for hours. And I choose not to because it's too sad. But in terms of as a case study, I have never in my entire life ever witnessed anybody like him before. He is an anomaly. He might be the dumbest person on the planet with the biggest following. It's very interesting to me. It's very interesting. So it says here, a former army colonel with a background in information warfare appeared on a Christian conservative podcast and offered a detailed account of his months-long effort to challenge the validity of the 2020 vote count. In a pleasant Texas drawl, the former officer, Phil Wardren, told the hosts of a story that was almost inconceivable: how a cabal of bad actors, including Chinese communist officials, international shell companies, and the financier George Soros, had quietly conspired to hack into US voting machines in a globalist socialist plot to steal the election. In normal times, a tale like that, full of wild and baseless claims, might have been dismissed as the overheated rantings of a conspiracy theorist. But the period was not normal, because providing all sorts of fringe players an opportunity to find an audience in the White House, Mr. Walden Waldron stands as a case study, working in conjunction with allies of Donald Trump, like Rudolph Giuliani, Sidney Powell, Louis Gohmert of Texas, a member of the ultra-conservative House Freedom Caucus, and in tandem with others like Michael T. Flynn, Mr. Trump's first national security advisor, retired lieutenant general, who admitted to lying twice to the House. So, this is why they need to do voting rights, because there's so much stuff going on that could prevent people. And the thing is, the whole point of doing voting rights is it gives everybody the chance to vote. You want more people to vote. The more people that vote, the more democratic voting is. Everybody. Republicans, Democrats, Independents, everybody. Vote. And really, if we go back to what Trump said in the interview yesterday, he says the only reason they're doing voting rights is so that they'll win. And what that really admits to is the fact that the Republicans have relied on preventing people from voting in order to win, making it more difficult for people who are likely to vote Democrat to win. It's cheating, basically cheating the election. And Trump's pretty happy with that, Let's just carry on cheating. Works for us. The tragic part of it is that I think that a lot of his followers are totally down for that. Just like, as long as he wins, it doesn't matter how it happens. Like conceptually, the idea of a free democratic vote and the will of the people being the result of the election, it really doesn't matter to people that are in that cult. They really don't care how you get the result as long as you get the result. Here's a story that comes out of China. It says, as the global pandemic hit, the world's biggest maker of electric car batteries, a Chinese company, now worth more than General Motors and Ford combined, suddenly faced its own crisis. A rival had released a video suggesting that a technology used by the company, CATL, and other manufacturers could cause car fires. Imitating a Chinese government safety test, the rival had driven a nail through a battery cell, one of many in a typical electric car battery. The cell exploded in a fireball. Chinese officials took swift action by dropping the nail test, according to documents reviewed by the New York Times. The new regulation, released 2 months later, listed who had drafted it. First on the list, ahead of the government's own vehicle testing agency, was CATL. It's a little bit like the pharmaceutical companies that invented the cholesterol scale. The companies that made statins were the people that told you that a certain point or certain level of cholesterol was bad cholesterol. So, apparently the $1 pizza slice is going to become a thing of the past in New York. This is more my kind of story. So talking about Chinese car batteries and the fall of democracy and the rise of fascism. It's irrelevant. Let's get down to brass tacks here. For 2 decades, 99-cent fresh pizza, New York City chain, had charged $1 for a slice of cheese pizza, luring anyone who needed to fill up for cheap in a notoriously expensive city, from construction workers to students to late-night partiers. Well, they could say homeless people as well. I mean, that's also a big market for the $1 pizza, is the homeless. Leave that out. Let's just pretend they don't exist. But the pandemic has thrown its business model, which relies on heavy foot traffic in office districts and tourist hubs, into an existential crisis. With inflation rising at its fastest pace in a generation, prices for just about everything from pizza boxes to pepperoni, flour and oil have skyrocketed. The chain's owner, Mohammed Abdul, is now agonizing over whether to raise prices for the first time since opening in 2001. Maybe I can raise it 5 cents, he said. Some customers don't have the money to buy the pizza. I'm thinking, how low can I sell it and help the customer? I mean, this is a thing of beauty. This story is a thing of beauty. When you have an individual rather than a corporation running a business, He only cares about the customers getting fed. And he doesn't care how much money he makes, as long as he makes enough to live by the sounds of it. He just wants to make sure that he's selling the $1 pizza. It says Mr. Abdul is one of the last holdouts in New York City's fiercely competitive dollar slice pizza scene, where a growing number of chains have raised prices or closed locations, in part because some can no longer pay their rent. No other city in America has a dollar slice culture quite like New York, which took off in popularity after the 2008 recession. I had a slice of pizza here at a independent store recently. I bought a slice for my son and myself to share. It's so weird saying I have a son. I have a son. And it was $5.99. It was $5.99 for a slice of really not very good pizza. Cheesy pizza. Nothing on it. I could have bought 6 slices in New York for the price of one slice of pizza. In England, where I'm from, I could have bought an entire pizza for $5.99. And a salad and a drink. This is the world that we live in, folks. Stacey's with us. Alicia's with us. Family, good morning. Seema has joined us as well from Mexico. Good morning. Thank you for joining Backchannel. Nice to know you're part of the show. If you want to message at any time, like Stacey has. She's saying, I'm having pizza with chips and some cookies. Well, there you go. I hope you didn't pay more than 99 cents for it. I've started actually making my own pizzas now. I find it's the cheapest and most healthy way to do it. So I buy the base in Trader Joe. They sell 2 bases for, I think it's $5.99 for 2 bases. So it's basically $3 a base. And then I smear some marinara on it. Now, I don't know that marinara and pizza sauce are the same thing, are they? Are they the same thing? Because I did actually buy specific pizza sauce before, and it seemed to have a slightly different consistency. Maybe it was a little bit more viscous. Anyway. So I smear the marinara on. I buy the marinara for $1.89 a jar. It's the Trader Joe's own brand. And it's very good. And that's the kind of price I like to pay, $1.89. Because if you buy Rao's pizza sauce or spaghetti sauce, it's like upward of $11 here in Los Angeles. It's quite amazing. Anyway, long story short, don't know how we got into this. But then it means I can sprinkle some vegan cheese, like a cashew-based cheese or an almond cheese or some kind of nut-based cheese, soy-based cheese. I can sprinkle that on. Then I slice mushrooms, and I like to add olives. Those nice pitted black olives, the Greek ones. So if I was to then work out the cost of my pizza, the $3 base, the share of the marinara, a couple of mushrooms, 4 olives. I reckon my pizza is probably coming in at around $5. Maybe $4.50. That's how much my pizza's coming in for. And there's no waste, and there's no... Because, you look at the ingredients of a frozen pizza in this town, or across much of the US, and there's a lot of stuff in there I don't want to eat, like guar gum and xanthan and just binding agents and stuff. It's so disgusting. I don't like agents at the best of times. Carla, I just thought Carla's producing the show, by the way. She's right here. Carla, on this subject, I just thought in a future show, I would like to talk about the cities and the towns across America where you can't buy vegetables. It's a whole thing. It is a health food wasteland. Kentucky. State of Kentucky. You can't buy vegetables. No, I had that same reaction. I had exactly that same reaction. You cannot buy vegetables. And this is why people are getting so ill. And this is why people are getting so overweight. And this is why people are so unhealthy in so many of these towns in the South and Middle America that these supermarkets are not stocking fresh food anymore. And so people go to Chick-fil-A, or they go to Burger King, or they go to, one of these, and that's how people are eating. And there is a whole journalistic genre now dedicated. There's a name for it. I wish I knew the name for it. It's something like, it's not food poverty, it's something like, I wish I could remember the name. Anyway, it's a whole genre, and I thought we should spend a bit of time in the coming days and weeks talking about the fact that if you are unfortunate enough to live in a place that has no access to fresh food, some of these towns, they actually grow this stuff and they export it, but they don't sell it locally. Anyway, I knew, Carla, you would be fascinated about this because this is such an interesting subject. And I actually have friends from Kentucky, several friends, and they were the first people to alert me to this, that you just cannot, you would have to drive 100 miles to find a vegetable. So people are eating stuff like super noodles and just fake food. Food deserts, that's what it is. Carla, welcome to the world of the food desert. I'm very pleased I've been able to introduce you to a whole new genre. We are going to get under the skin of the food desert because I am convinced that this is something that is so huge. It's such a huge conversation to have that where you live, where you are born, could mean the diseases that you will get and the reason that you will be unwell and unhealthy because of these food deserts. Thank you for finding the name of food deserts. It changes everything, doesn't it? The fact that it even has a name. And yet I've never heard Biden talk about it. I've never heard it like on the lips of people. And I guess the most eloquent people, the people that really fight for their constituents, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's from an area where they probably do have vegetables. But West Virginia doesn't have any vegetables, and that's Joe Manchin territory. And he just killed the social care and climate bill. Anyway, it's a huge subject, and it's one that I kind of really look forward to discussing in a future show with you. And all this, I was reminded of this, talking about the $1 slice of pizza, which in itself is like a remarkable feat considering the state of the economy. Okay, let's move on. What do we have here? Ah, yes, the Los Angeles Times. This is a good one. They lead with Texas kindles copycat statues. It says after abortion law is upheld, Newsom and others apply tactics to target guns and education. Excuse me, it says a gun rights group warned the Supreme Court in late October that upholding Texas's so-called vigilante anti-abortion law excuse me, would have grave consequences for other constitutionally protected activities. Says the most useful way to appreciate the significance of this case is to stop thinking of it as an abortion case and recognize it for what it is, wrote Eric Jaffe, a Washington, D.C. lawyer for the Firearms Policy Coalition, a vehicle for deterring the exercise of any and all rights. It's very interesting. I mean, this is Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. He's basically taken this concept that Texas has pioneered, this kind of weird legal loophole, where instead of the state making abortion illegal, you are empowering and allowing people, regular people, to police the law and to sue people for up to $10,000 for harvesting an abortion. That could be the cab driver that drives the person to the clinic. It could be the clinic itself. It could be the equipment used at the clinic. It could be the individual performing the termination, as well as the individual who's having the abortion. And all of that, conceptually, is a brand new thing. And Gavin Newsom, I personally don't think it's the right tactic, but, he's the governor and I'm not. He basically is now going to apply that same concept to firearms ownership for like semi-automatic weapons, military-style weapons. I just think that, when Michelle Obama said they go low, we go high? Do you remember that? To me, this is they go low, we go lower. And I can't really get behind that. Because I just know the law in America, and it's just going to become this deep dive to the bottom. Also on the front of the LA Times, no LA closure despite variant threat. It said, despite the rapid spread of the Omicron coronavirus variant, Los Angeles County's top health officials said on Tuesday that no lockdowns are planned at this time, and vaccine and other safety measures remain strong tools to combat the new threat. The stance is the nation's most populous county in the nation's most populous county, echoes statements from President Biden, National COVID-19 czar Dr. Anthony Fauci, and health officials elsewhere in California. Meanwhile, Governor Gavin Newsom on Tuesday announced that California will mandate boosters for all healthcare workers in hopes of improving immunity and protecting hospitals from an expected surge of patients. So, they're just going down the same route as before, which is please get vaccinated, please get boosted, please keep your distance, please wear masks. Beyond that, you are relying on people's intelligence. And clearly, only 70% of people have a brain. I had the same thing even talking with my stepmother yesterday. She went to a drinks party and she didn't ask anybody about their status, and it was indoors and they were maskless. And then she came over to my place and I was like, I have to wear a mask, and so do you. And she's like, I'm not wearing a mask. I'm like, you have gone outside of our bubble. 4 days before Christmas. I do not want to get sick. My brother has COVID. He got it on Tuesday last week. And he's been down. He's been out. And we're hoping that he'll get a negative lateral flow test before Saturday. And then he can join us for lunch. But it's tough. Everyone, my best friend who's supposed to be coming from England to Los Angeles on the 12th of January got COVID. Cancelled the flight. Because, if you're traveling, you can't get insurance now. And did you know that, travel insurance does not really cover healthcare in America? It just doesn't. They're not interested in travel insurance. They're interested in health insurance. It's a different thing. Gone are the days when you can get yourself a travel insurance policy that covers you to go see a doctor. Forget it. You really have to search far and wide to find a company that will effectively insure you on a trip in America to go into a hospital. And the reason is because they know it'll bankrupt them. If you get sick with COVID and you're hospitalized and you're not from America and you don't have health care, it could be tens of thousands of dollars. It's difficult, isn't it? It's difficult. So really people are choosing not to travel rather than face that risk. Here's a story that I'm very interested in, actually, on the front of the LA Times. Biden officials okay to solar plants in Southland Desert. The huge projects raise concerns about sensitive habitat. It says the Interior Department gave the green light on Tuesday to 2 huge solar farms in the California desert, a reminder that the Biden administration still has tools to combat climate change, even if it can't pass the president's Build Back Better bill. The 2 solar plants could eventually cover 2,700 acres in Riverside County, just an hour's drive east of Palm Springs and just south of Joshua Tree National Park. Federal officials say they would generate enough electricity to power 132,000 California homes. Just do it. Just do it, It's like, it's zero emissions. Zero emissions. It says that energy would help keep the lights on after dark, with the developer also building a bank of lithium batteries. A third solar farm in the same area, which the Biden administration said it expects to approve soon, would bring the total clean power generation at the new facilities to nearly 1,000 megawatts of solar and 900 megawatts of 4-hour battery storage. It's amazing, isn't it? You know, the concept of storing electricity in batteries. And you know, they're using old Tesla batteries, old car batteries. You know, that's what they're using. They're cascading these batteries that are used in electric cars, and they're putting them into these types of, and even at home, you know, there's the Tesla Powerwall, which is a battery that stores electricity from your solar panels on your roof if you choose to get them. That is made of an old Tesla car battery. Because whilst if it was still used in the car, the range might decrease, it's still fine for storing power at home. I find battery technology fascinating. Fascinating. I think about it quite a lot. Yeah, I just do. Okay, what else do we have? Oh, Stacey's message. She said, I'm not feeling myself today. I have a bit of a headache after taking a pool. Well, if you take the whole pool, then I can understand why you don't feel great. She says, I'm from an area where you can get lots and lots of vegetables. Well, Texas, I'm sure, has vegetables. Also here, the unthinkable, getting deported back to Afghanistan. It says, unlike most of his compatriots, Jamal Popoli didn't have to worry about being stuck in Afghanistan when the Taliban sped to power in August. Popoli had quit his homeland years ago to set up shop as a stonemason here in neighboring Iran, just outside Tehran. But instead of relief, what the 30-year-old father of two feels these days is fear. As one of hundreds of thousands of undocumented Afghans in this country, he's frightened of getting snared in one of the growing number of sweeps by Iranian authorities and sent back to his native land, where an uncertain fate awaits, especially for him as an ethnic Uzbek in a Pashtun-dominated Taliban-run society. That's interesting, isn't it? You know, you think you're safe in like a neighboring country, and then you just get wished straight back. Deported from Iran back to Afghanistan. So that's the LA Times for us this morning. By the way, if you're living somewhere and you have a local newspaper, oh, you took a fall, says Stacey, not a pool. Okay, I'm sorry. You fell down. I'm with you now. I'm sorry you had a fall. There's nothing worse, you know. I find that the older I get now, I mean, I've put my back out, not from a fall. I actually, I got out of bed and I did a cartwheel to get out of bed. And in the process of cartwheeling, because I was too far in the middle of the bed, and I cartwheeled and I put my back out. And I've since had to move 2 pianos. It's been I've had the worst week in terms of shifting stuff. Well, because the roof leaked and it leaked into the piano. And my landlord kindly agreed to buy me a new piano, and the new piano arrived, but it arrived without an on switch. It was missing an on switch. So I couldn't turn it on, so I had to take it back. So I basically had to carry 2 pianos, and I ruined my back again. Stacey, let's do the San Antonio Express news just for you. The headline there is over 3 million okayed to fight family violence. It says, in reforms prompted by an Express News investigation, Bexar County commissioners voted on Tuesday to spend $3.3 million to hire more prosecutors, investigators, and victim advocates, and create 2 temporary courts to tackle a huge backlog in domestic violence cases. The temporary courts will be devoted exclusively to misdemeanor domestic violence assault cases, which have surged in recent years, overwhelming the district attorney's office. Oh, man. I mean, I don't know. I feel like... I actually feel like family violence has probably increased partly due to the pandemic. You know, people being stuck at home, frustrated, not being able to, exercise their mental freedom by leaving the house and going off to work and, taking their frustration out on their colleagues. They end up taking it out on their family. It's very hard. And also lack of money, because, of course, people have had, money is a huge reason why people fall out with each other, especially in families. And if you're struggling financially, you suddenly really feel it emotionally. The idea, especially as a parent, not being able to feed your kids, or it's very, very stressful. So funding slated to provide more help and tackle case backlog, it says. Okay, what's next? Biden promises free tests to combat Omicron. Yeah, we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail later. Yeah, my chair creaks. I do have some WD-40 spray upstairs, so I'll give it a little spray. I mean, I kind of like it. Reminds me of like the opening scene to The Addams Family. You look a little wet. I suppose you'd better come inside. Fighting the Omicron variant surging through the country, President Joe Biden announced on Tuesday the government would provide $500 million free rapid tests, increase support for hospitals under strain, and redouble vaccination and boosting efforts. It says at the White House on Tuesday, Biden detailed major changes to his COVID-19 winter plan. His hand forced by the arrival of the fast-spreading Omicron variant, whose properties are not yet fully understood by scientists. Yet his message was clear. The winter holidays could be close to normal for the vaccinated, while potentially dangerous for the unvaccinated. So, there's something to consider. I just bought 6 packs of tests online because they were half price at Walmart. They were $14 each instead of $23.99, which they normally are. And the tragedy is that I thought that was a deal. And yet, in Germany or the United Kingdom, all tests are free. All free. You just apply online, they send them to you the next day. A pack of 10 or a pack of 7. And, I mean, this is the tragedy. I have probably spent around $800 or $900 in tests in the last 2 years. And I have no way of getting reimbursed for that. $800 or $900. I mean, it's crazy. When the coronavirus first started and they were doing rapid testing in Los Angeles, it was at least $130, $140. At least. Private companies were making a fortune. I worked out you could buy the test machine for $2,500. I mean, admittedly, I didn't have a license, but I thought, I could set up a drive-through business outside my house and just test people, and I could charge them $100 a time, and I could be making thousands a day and pay for the machine in like 2 days. I mean, I'm not a medical man. I wouldn't do it, obviously. I'm not a fraudster, but it crossed my mind that these companies were making a fortune. So I must have paid for at least 4 or 5 of those at around anywhere between $130 to $160 a piece. The PCR was more expensive. And then on top of that, I've been buying these Abbott Bixar tests, 2 in a pack, $23.99. Plus tax. Making tax. They're making tax. And I've bought loads of them. I must have spent near to $1,000 on testing. And then in addition to that, I've had a whole bunch of tests through my insurance company, invariably PCR tests, where, and I mentioned this on the show the other day, they are billing several $100s to the insurance for that. It's a racket. And now, here we are on the 21st of December, nearly 2 years to the day that coronavirus started. And Joe Biden is saying, something? I'm going to get 500 million tests, and they'll be distributed to you if you need them. Do you know how few tests that is? There's 361 million people in America, and he's getting 500 million tests. Right? That is less than 2 tests per person. Less than 2 tests per person. It's not enough. It doesn't even come close. He needs to get $1 trillion worth of tests. But he can't even get $1 trillion approved for social spending and climate, because of one conservative Democrat in West Virginia, who he's not given up on, incidentally. He's still prepared to, give Joe Manchin the time of day. Can I make a prediction about Joe Manchin? I have a prediction to make. I think he'll switch parties. I think he will announce that he's leaving the Democrats and joining the Republicans. That's just my hunch. That's not news. That's just my opinions, just hunch. But I just have a feeling that could happen. And it's worrying, because he has the deciding vote in the Senate. How did that guy even become a senator? He doesn't seem to know anything about anything. He just says, I just can't do it. Layla, thank you for joining us this morning from Fishes. Nice to know that you're there. Stacey says Governor Greg Abbott is asking every character to get vaccinated. Well, he's changed his tune. Greg Abbott was a bit of a conspiracy theorist last time I checked. He certainly does not. He's asking people, he's not mandating it, but people are not going to get vaccinated in Texas. They're just not. Texas is a very split state. It's about what, 70-30 red state. Arizona, which we would have thought would have also been a red state, I think in the last election, I think Biden won that by 57%. There you are. The Boston Globe this morning leads with fighting a deepening crisis, hoping to stem what experts are warning will be a viral blizzard this winter as the Omicron variant of COVID-19 grips the nation. President Biden on Tuesday announced plans to deploy millions of troops to hospitals, create new federal testing sites, add vaccination capacity, and said 500 million rapid tests for free to people's homes. It says the new steps come as COVID-19 cases surge across the country, with the highly transmissible variant accounting for 73% of... Oh, turn to page 12. I wish I could. Also, sounding a new urgency over resurgent pandemic, Governor Charlie Baker on Tuesday deployed the National Guard to help hospitals in Massachusetts struggling with staff shortages and ordered them to cancel non-essential surgeries to accommodate a tide of patients sick with COVID and other serious illnesses. It says Baker stopped short of imposing a statewide mask mandate, instead opting to issue an advisory recommending that people should now wear masks inside public places. Just an advisory. I never took my mask off. I mean, I know I'm not wearing it now. Is it in my pocket? I mean, I have masks in every pocket of every pair of pants that I wear. Oh, my back is killing me. Clearly not this one today. I'm actually missing a whole bunch of masks. I don't know if you've seen them. Just kind of vanished. Requiring proof of shots raises questions, it says, in Mayor Michelle Wu's next move to get more Bostonians vaccinated. She's calling on local servers, bartenders, gym owners, and concert venue staff to prohibit the unvaccinated from entering their establishment. I mean, that's happening here as well. You know, it really is. They're you go in anywhere, you have to show proof of vaccination now if you want to eat indoors or anything like that. It says people who want to partake in indoor dining, fitness activities and entertainment events will need to show they've been inoculated as part of the city's new proof of vaccination policy called Be Together. It goes into effect on the 15th of January. Why are you waiting till the 15th of January? Hey, I have a theory on this. Carla, you're going to love this. I really worked hard on this one. So all the people that yesterday Biden was talking to say, please get vaccinated. It's too late. It's too late. Think about it. If you get vaccinated now and get your first dose, you're not fully vaccinated. You have to get a second dose in 4 weeks. And then 2 weeks later, you're considered to be fully vaccinated under a 2-dose regime. But Omicron is only responding to a 3-dose regime. Well, that's 6 months later. So you are effectively 7.5 months late to protect yourself from Omicron. Well, there'll be another variant, but what I'm saying is that if the variant is going to hit now, like in the week after Christmas, which is likely to be the case, because it's normally 3 weeks after the UK, you're going to have 30% of the population who were like anti-vax, or I don't want to get it, or it doesn't work, or it's untested, any of these crazy excuses. They are now effectively 7.5 months behind everybody else to get fully vaccinated. So what I'm saying is, yeah, get vaccinated now. But by taking this position, because Omicron is so transmissible, and the likelihood is we're all going to get it, not like Delta where we were effectively protecting ourselves. Somehow, Omicron is much more transmissible. It means that this is why he's like, not panicking, but this is why he's like throwing all of this new effort and getting the army and everybody else to kind of be involved. It's because we have effectively 30% of the population who are 7.5 months behind the regime. I mean, Israel is doing 4th shots, and yet the US, for 30% of the people, haven't even done 1 shot. That's my concern. So what I'm saying is that we really need to encourage people to get on with it, because I think that there is so much confusion now that some people think that they could just get a booster now, because when people have been, the media is saying the booster is the best protection against Omicron. And so that people might be thinking, well, I'll just get the booster. And it's like, no. We'll talk about this in more detail later. It's 12 minutes to 10 here on the West Coast. I'm Anthony. Good morning. Welcome to Backchannel. It's the 22nd of December. Naguib just joined us. Layla's with us as well. Alicia's here. Stacy, obviously. So, we're just hanging out. It's nice. You and me, 99-cent slice of pizza. I could totally eat that, by the way. Carla, if you want to stay on afterwards, I just want you to know that Jim and I are going to do our thing after this show. So if you wanted to stay on, then you might want to join in for that. I thought that might be kind of cute. It's 9:48, which is a minute after I announced the time about a minute ago, just so you know. Let's jump to the Florida Times Union. If you're in Florida, then this one's for you, Mr. Trump. Analysis studies vaccine divide. Here we go. It's exactly what we've been talking about. Few members of Florida communities where most people are black or Republican, or where internet access and voter participation is lacking, have got the free COVID-19 vaccine. A Palm Beach post-analysis using non-public state data now shows. It says for the first time since the summer, Florida health officials have revealed they can show vaccination rates by race and ethnicity in virtually all of the state's 67 counties. Isn't that crazy? The level of data that they have now. Says a Palm Beach post-analysis of this database, obtained by lawyers representing a consortium of news outlets, reveals stark inoculation divides along racial and political lines, among other factors down to the zip code. And while 64% of Florida residents had received at least 1 shot as of November 5th, the latest available data, which includes race and ethnicity, shows that immunization levels remain much lower in communities where many residents are younger or lack college degrees. In Duval County, where 55% of the population was vaccinated as of November 5th, about 32% of black residents and 40% of Hispanics had received at least one shot, the data shows. The same was true of about 43% of white people. Medical workers did not record racial and ethnic information for about 17% of vaccine recipients. Statewide, 29% of black residents and 56% of Latinos had received the jab, compared with at least 42% of whites. Still, the analysis shows lagging vaccination rates among black residents in nearly every part of Florida. And I mean, if you know anything about the history of, inoculation testing on African Americans, you'll realize why there is this concern. I don't want to have a white person hit me with a needle, with something in it. I don't know what it is. This is the mindset of some people, not all people, some people. And this goes back to testing that took place in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, right up to the 90s, where people of color were used more than white people as guinea pigs for new inoculations. And so within these communities, there is a hesitance and a reticence to be jabbed. A photograph of a military drone. I mean, this is so Florida. It says it looks like a supersized pelican, bulbous head and wide wings on a slim fuselage, topped with a gaping air intake for its Rolls-Royce jet engine near a V-shaped tail. And as the Northrop Grumman MQ-4C Triton flew in last week from California to its new home at Naval Station Mayport, one thing was obvious to observers: there's no cockpit for a pilot. That's because the Triton is an unmanned drone aircraft flown remotely from a Naval Air Station Jacksonville Operations Center, the first of up to 4 planned for the VUP-19 drone squadron's new Mayport home port. It will handle the Navy's East Coast surveillance and search and rescue operations. Surveillance. We now have drones surveilling us on the East Coast. They'll also be joined by 200 maintenance personnel at the Navy base to handle housing and maintenance. This is the US military's largest drone that we fly, and it's now home ported in Jacksonville, and that's the excitement for the local area. Yes! Drones! It says it will bring a number of folks I've had in California for the last couple of years to be home ported here for support. It truly is at the forefront of naval aviation and the direction we're going with intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance aircraft. I mean, I love an aeroplane. Don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of the aeroplane. And I find the concept of drones amazing, being flown remotely. Because it's like a computer game, isn't it? It's like a flight simulator. The pilot sits in a warehouse or in a hangar and basically can fly the plane anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world. No range issues, nothing. Anywhere in the world. And they could do this with passenger jets. You don't need to have pilots on board passenger jets these days. They can be flown completely remotely. There's no reason to have a pilot up front. I mean, they're talking about having one pilot, But that even one pilot is scaring some passengers. Do you see what I mean? They like the comfort of having two. But technically, right now, you can do it with one or none. And they have been testing. Airbus have been testing flying their A350, with one pilot and pilotless. And of course, you probably know, and I'll just give you a little bit of an education about it if you don't know, that the pilot actually doesn't really fly the plane at all. Now, like currently on a commercial airliner. The only bit the pilot does is taxi the plane on the ground, They don't even reverse it. You've probably seen there's a little towing truck that pushes back the aircraft off the stand, and then the pilot it turns it sideways, and then the pilot turns on the engines. When you hear the engines kind of rev up, and then the pilot just taxis the aircraft to the runway. So the pilot does that bit. Obviously, the pilot's programmed the computer, told the computer where he wants the plane to fly. And then once the aeroplane is... this is all airplanes. Once the aeroplane is then at the front of the runway, ready to go, the pilot will manually fly the aeroplane down the runway, and he'll pull back on the yoke to take the plane off. After about 30 seconds, takes the plane off. Plane goes up, and the moment the plane is up to about 500 feet or 1,000 feet, which takes about 10 or 15 seconds, what does the pilot do? Presses autopilot and lets go. And that's it for the whole flight. And then even the landing can be completely automated. Now, a lot of airlines specify that the pilot flies the landing, but do you know when the pilot takes over from the autopilot? They take over sometimes 500 feet before the plane lands. So the plane is literally flown the route, it's seen the airport, it's flying towards the runway, and is doing all the work, and then the pilot holds on and literally flies the last 10 or 15 seconds of the flight. Now, they call this stick time. And this is why there have been crashes, because pilots are so inexperienced now at flying. Because they don't have to do any of it. They fly the first 30 seconds of the flight and the last 30 seconds of the flight. So even though in the pilot's logbook, it says the pilot flew the plane for, say, 5 hours. The actual stick time, like feeling the weight of the plane and the balance of the plane and the trajectory of the aircraft and actually getting a sense of flight, the pilot's flown 1 minute out of 5 hours. I mean, when you're in the cruise at like 30,000 feet doing 500 miles an hour, the pilot can't even fly that. Like, it's not physically possible to fly the plane at that speed and not do it on autopilot. It would be too bumpy. Like the computer has to do it. It's very interesting to me. So there's now within the industry, there's a whole thing now called automation addiction, where pilots are so used to autopilot that they've become so addicted to autopilot. Not their fault. It's not their fault. This is the training. That they actually don't have much experience in flying the plane. And arguably, the plane flies itself better than the pilots do. And then if you're flying into a airport that has had a storm, or if there is snow, or if there is zero visibility or low visibility. Do you know what I mean by low visibility? Like you can only really see like a few hundred feet in front of you. The pilot doesn't do the landing at all. The airplane does everything. That's called a Cat 3 auto land. And the airplane basically has sensors and it receives beams from the runway and it levels itself and it gets its speed right. You know, the speed is kind of often controlled by the pilot. But in terms of like where the plane is, the plane does it all by itself. Even right down to the landing, it even applies the brakes. The only thing the pilot has to do is put the reverse thrusters on to slow the plane down. But everything else is done by the plane. And it's very interesting to me that people don't really realize that there's very little piloting going on these days. Now, obviously, if something goes wrong, the pilot needs to be there. But there are 3 computers that could do this job. So if the first computer fails, there's 2 backups. If the second one fails, there's a 3rd backup. All the systems in the flight deck are all protected by 2 backup systems. Very clever. Anyway, I just thought we'd talk about that just for a moment, because it's just interesting when a drone arrives and people are like, oh, there's no pilot. I'm like, We haven't really used pilots in any great detail for a long time. Pilots are kind of there to psychologically support passengers. And if you're dealing with a military aircraft where there are no passengers, you don't need a pilot. The technology is already there. Should we do the US news update, seeing as it's 10 o'clock or 1 o'clock on the East Coast? Thank you very much for, spending your morning with Backchannel. We've got a lot to talk about this morning. We're going to dive into some subjects in a bit more detail in just a second. But first, I'll play you the podcast that we make every single day here on Volley. It's called US News Update. 2 minutes of what's happening in America. Here it is. It's Wednesday, December 22. From the Volley Network, this is your daily US News Update. I'm Anthony Davis. US President Joe Biden on Tuesday accused unspecified cable television personalities and social media companies of making money by peddling lies about COVID-19 vaccines and spreading misinformation that can kill their viewers and followers. In a White House speech warning the unvaccinated of the dangers of the fast-spreading Omicron variant, Biden said the unvaccinated are responsible for their own choices. But he added, those choices have been fueled by dangerous misinformation on cable and social media. A politically motivated disinformation campaign has helped fuel skepticism about the safety of vaccines in the United States against overwhelming medical evidence that shows they work and pose little risk. 1 in 4 American adults is not vaccinated. Joe Biden said on Tuesday that he and conservative Democratic Senator Joe Manchin were going to get something done on the president's proposed social spending and climate legislation. I want to get things done. I still think there's a possibility of getting Build Back Better done, the president told reporters. Manchin said on Monday the White House staff did inexcusable things that led to his decision to publicly reject Biden's social and climate policy plan. He told Fox News on Sunday he would not be able to vote for the $1.75 trillion Build Back Better bill. Meanwhile, the Biden administration has approved 2 major solar projects in the California desert and is working on permit applications for 50 more clean energy facilities as it seeks to deliver on the president's climate change agenda. Your daily US news update is part of the Volley Network. To hear my live daily morning show, ask your Amazon Echo device to open Backchannel. There it is. So the US News Update you can get wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Anthony Davis. This is the Anthony Davis Show. Thank you very much for joining us here on Backchannel on this, what day is it? Oh, it's Wednesday, on this Wednesday morning. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. 3 more sleeps. 3 more sleeps. You having a Jamaican Christmas dinner? Does that mean that you have to Jamaica it yourself? Jamaica? No. She went all by herself. Do you, what is a Jamaican Christmas dinner? Is there any turkey? It might be fish and plantain. I mean, it's like a Caribbean meal. I mean, I've had like Christmas in the Caribbean several times. Because, when I was living in England, it was so cold there that in the winter, and especially for Christmas Day, there was something kind of fun about being in a warm climate. Now, obviously, I get it all the time now in California, but it's just very interesting. I've actually bought myself a Christmas present, which you will see on this show. I bought myself a new microphone. It arrives in 2 days' time to replace this one. Oh, you bought a floor lamp, Carla. That's great. I need a floor lamp, actually. It's interesting, isn't it, what one needs versus what one wants. I had a weird kind of microphone. I collect microphones, like a hobby of mine, and I have done since I was a child. I have dozens of them. And they all do different things, and my dream is to put like my 6 favorites into like a Perspex casing and have it like as a display. But I don't know if I'll ever achieve that dream. Anyway, there's a black one of these coming. It looks like this, but it's actually half the price, And I used to have one. I upgraded to this one. And I actually think I prefer the cheaper one. So I reordered the cheaper one. And I might just save this and keep it for special occasions. I mean, it's a funny-looking thing. It actually looks like a piece of military equipment. Do you know who makes this? Bosch. This is a microphone made by Bosch. You know, make washing machines. Isn't that crazy? It's made in America, incidentally. Made in America. The one that I'm buying is a copy of this made in China. But I bought it secondhand, so, you know, it might even have a little coronavirus in the top of it, I'm hoping. Shall we, before we jump into our kind of big subject, I wanted to say hi to Judy, who's joined us from California. Hello, Judy. Thank you for joining Backchannel. I'm Anthony. I wanted to jump to the Florida Times Union this morning. Have we done this one yet? Oh, yeah, we've done this one. I didn't do this was the one that had the drone on the front. I just didn't yet do the story about this dolphin fish bag. I don't even know if I should do this dolphin fish bag story. It sounds really strange. I mean, the story's not strange, but the headline is strange. It says the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission has approved several significant rule changes that will go into effect in 2022, and it's working on more. It says anglers will find reduced bag limits for dolphin fish, that's mahi-mahi. Seafood consumers will find largemouth bass on restaurant menus, and captive wildlife owners will find some changes to permit requirements. The 7-member governor-appointed board approved these and other changes during a 2-day meeting in Destin last week. I mean, so this is the food that you give to other fish? Is that what this is about? It doesn't really make sense to me. You would have thought that if they're putting it on the front of the Florida Times Union, they would at least have it make sense. Not necessary. Incidentally, Volley has a growing list of shows, including Haley and Allison Live, waking you up in the morning with lots of laughs, and their 1-star cinema review. Live Every Day with Liv Harrison. She's live from Texas. She celebrates the little things in life with plenty of gin. And what about the charming and funny Hal Rudnick, whose program, Your Pal Hal, directly follows this show at 11 o'clock this morning. I watched Your Pal Hal yesterday. Enjoyed him very much. The Arizona Daily Star is next. Let's see what they're offering us this morning. A local telescope team waits for Webb to fly. Interesting. It says designing the main camera for NASA's new $10 billion space telescope is a little like that Tom Petty song. The waiting is the hardest part. It says University of Arizona astronomer and Regents Professor Marcia Reich first began working on the James Webb Space Telescope in 1998 when the project was in its infancy. Well, since 2002, she's led the development team for the near-infrared camera, which will allow Webb to peer into the deepest reaches of the universe in search of light made by galaxies more than 13.5 billion years ago. It says that Reich and company handed over the finished camera to NASA in 2013. They've been waiting for it to be sent into space ever since. Oh, I see. This is one of the ones that's going up on a spaceship, or the USS Enterprise or something. Apparently, a lot of people got into astronomy. It's a combination of the two, astronomy. During the lockdown. You know, something to do. Once you've watched everything on Netflix, the only thing you've got left to do is look in the sky, I guess. I very rarely see, really kind of good stars from my house here. You know, there's a lot of light pollution in Los Angeles. And so you end up basically just seeing a reflection of yourself. But I do have the iPad app called Night Sky. I don't know if you've ever tried that. You can get it on your phone as well. You hold it up to the sky and it shows you all of the constellations and the astrology connected to the constellations. Very interesting. It's amazing what's up there. The Great Bear and the saucepan and the teapot and the cuddly toy. I mean, all of the stuff you can win. It's all in the sky. Also on the Arizona Daily Star, county reinstates mandate for masks. It says the Pima County Board of Supervisors voted 3-2 on Tuesday to reinstate a mask mandate as COVID-19 transmission remains high throughout the country. County residents will be required to wear masks at all indoor public spaces when continually maintaining a 6-foot distance from others isn't possible. But there's no clear enforcement on these requirements. I mean, they're just doing it to appease Biden, aren't they? But they know that it's like, they don't care. They don't care. A photograph of Joe Manchin. It said Democratic Senator Joe Manchin III. Joe Manchin III. You mean there were 2 other Joe Manchins? Oh, that's just great. Just when you thought that the third one was bad enough, it turns out there's 2 others. It says that he opposed President Biden's massive spending package. It said that his announcement may be much more than a political setback for the White House, because in torpedoing a bill that included $555 billion to combat climate change, the longtime West Virginia senator is, at least for now, single-handedly preventing the U.S. from being able to reach Biden's emissions reductions target and undermining the president's credibility in persuading other countries to take steps to stave off a catastrophic future of extreme heat, storms, fires, and floods. So, there it is. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, this guy, I've said this, the way I phrased it was that one man has ended an entire political generation's, an entire political movement. You know, like all of the people that voted for Biden based on these policies, 80 million people, plus all the others that support it that didn't vote. You know, under 18s and everybody else. It's just over. It's effectively over. The guy's not going to do it. He doesn't care because it's just corruption. The guy, his family own a coal business. And what this bill will do is effectively sink coal and replace it with renewables. And of course he's not going to go for that. It said a broad array of Democratic lawmakers and environmental activists responded to Manchin's shift with an unusual degree of unanimity, pledging to press ahead in recognition that failing to deliver on the climate provisions, which were a central element of Biden's presidential campaign, could spark an existential crisis for the planet and their party. I love the fact that the newspaper does not even question the fact that Joe Manchin is compromised. I mean, surely that's the first thing you're going to write about. You're going to ask why. Don't just report on the fact that he's changed his mind. We all know he's changed his mind. Why? That's what I want to know. Because he receives millions of dollars every year because of his private business that he does on the side. He's the wrong person to be a senator, you know, at this moment in history. The wrong person. Right now, it should be somebody who just realizes that the future is bleak and believes in it. But his opposition to the spending package is preventing the US from reaching emissions reductions targets. So what Biden will have to do, if I was to make a prediction, is what he started to do today in the announcement of these 2 solar farms, is he's just going to do it anyway. Take it out of this bill and put it in somewhere else, into infrastructure or into an executive order. Manchin. Compromised. Next up, from Muncie, Indiana, is the Star Press. They lead with hospitals hold first ever public pricing meetings. It's very interesting. It says, after hearing many constituents complain about the high cost of medical care and hospital billing, Fort Wayne Senator Justin Bush decided that it was time for the public to have any opportunity to ask questions of the state's healthcare institutions, Last year, he authored a bill that required hospitals and health insurers doing business in the state to each hold an annual public forum to discuss pricing in the interest of transparency. Well, this year, the first that the bill took effect, many of the affected non-profit hospitals waited until the final weeks of the year to hold their hour-long sessions in which they presented a picture of their finances while touting the work that they've done. And although many of the hospitals' presentations appeared somewhat pro forma, the state's largest hospital system, IU Health, took the opportunity at its forum on the 16th of December to announce it will strive to reduce fees to be in line with the national average by 2025. And here's the thing. All of these hospitals that claim to be not-for-profit are all making a huge profit. And how is it possible that they can claim to be not-for-profit? I mean, do they do that to justify the fact that they really have no intention of making healthcare affordable? Is that the reason? It's very interesting to me. Commissioners outlined plan for $1.6 million ARP bonus. This is Delaware County Council will have final say over salary bonuses for county workers from federal American Rescue Plan money. Delaware County Commissioners on Monday released more details on their plan to spend $1.6 million in salary bonuses they say are meant to retain workers. Well, lots of organizations are doing this, aren't they? Because there's an employment shortage. There's a worker shortage right now. Schools use therapy-based programs for overwhelmed kids. This talks about a comfort dog waiting to greet students at the early elementary wing of the Paw Paw Elementary School. Oh, of course you're going to use a little dog for Paw Paw Elementary. Goes without saying. So there we go. That's how the Star Press starts this Wednesday morning. But I think let's jump into some stories that are kind of in more detail. And if you want to join in at any time, then just wake up your device, say the word "say," then your message, and communicate with us here on Backchannel. And I'll bring your thoughts to the table, as best I can. So let's start by looking at the story about Donald Trump and the January 6th insurrection. And there's a lot of questions now about whether or not the White House itself was involved in the organization and the planning of the rally that led to the insurrection. Because the two are connected. It's not like the rally happened the morning, the Save America rally that happened out like a few hundred yards away from the Capitol building that Donald Trump stood at. And he said, take back your country, be strong. We're going to go to the Capitol now. I'll be with you, he said. I'll be with you. It's very clever the way he uses words that could be construed to mean one thing and mean something else. So I'll be with you. If he was to argue in court what I'll be with you means, he will mean I will be with you in spirit. I don't think he said I'll go with you. I think he said I'll be with you. From memory. That's what I think he said. To give the impression to people that he was going to go and take back the presidency, which of course he didn't do. He went and hid. He went and hid while it all happened. And he watched it unfold on television and took great pride and decided that he wasn't going to call it off. 3 hours he waited before he made a speech. And apparently the speech that he put out on video was a 1-minute video where he said, "We love you, but it's time to go home." Took 3 hours. And apparently that was his third attempt because he just couldn't do it. And he still talked about the election being fraudulent in that video. He said a terrible thing has happened. And now he's trying to rewrite history by claiming that the insurrection happened on the 4th of November. And what happened on the 6th of January was just a protest. Have you heard him say this? This is his whole new rhetoric. He says it in every interview. He says, I switch it. This is his phrase. He's very good at this, rewriting history. I switch it. Because he doesn't know what an insurrection is. So he's making it sound like that Biden winning on the 7th of November was the insurrection. Like blaming Biden for the insurrection because he got more votes. That's what he's doing. Sorry about the chair. Oh, my back is killing me. I have to sit back because I just need a bit of support, otherwise I'm perched. And yet he claims that what happened on the 6th of January was a protest. Well, I don't really see how any of that changes anything, because his people still went to the Capitol building. They still smashed all the windows. They still went looking for the head of Nancy Pelosi and Mike Pence. They still hung a gallows in the shadow of the Capitol building. This symbolic gallows for Mike Pence and Nancy Pelosi. They hung gallows. It's not like someone just said the word gallows. They actually built gallows. Like they were there with a noose. Like it was all there. And they destroyed property, which I'm not so fussed about. I care more about really what this symbolizes. The fall of democracy and the rise of fascism and pretending that there was election fraud when there wasn't, because it's now been analyzed. There was 475 votes across the whole country that were inaccurate. They weren't necessarily fraudulent. They were inaccurate. 475. Not enough to swing the election in Trump's favor. So we're asking this morning, how involved was the White House in organizing this? And did anyone in the government or Trump circles have reason to believe the day would turn violent? Well, many of Trump's cohorts predicted it, suggested that it would happen. You had Steve Bannon on the podcast, do you remember, 2 days before, announcing that January 6th, he said, you watch out for what's going to happen on January 6th. You had Roger Stone saying a similar thing. You had Rudolph Giuliani hinting that this might happen. They knew. Everybody knew. You had Lauren Boebert taking people on a tour the day before of the Capitol building, giving them directions on where to find the chamber and Nancy Pelosi's office. I mean, it's not like any of this is a surprise to me. I mean, were you somebody that was like, I can't believe this has happened. I'm so surprised this happened. I wasn't surprised. I could tell this was going to happen. I'm surprised it didn't happen earlier. In my view, this was on the cards for weeks, months. It was so obvious to me that this was going to happen. If you have a former president, remember, the vote was on the 7th of November, and the inauguration, or certainly this bit, was the 6th of January, and then the inauguration was like a little bit later. So you effectively had 3 or 4 weeks of this transition period when this was going to kick off. They were talking about it the whole time. On all of the forums, they were talking about it. So, how seriously did the president and the White House consider taking extraordinary measures to invalidate the election is the question. And let's be clear. He was leading the charge on this, not just making that speech on that morning, but in every interview that he gave in that period, he said that the election was fraudulent. He said that Biden had stolen the election. And all of his supporters now, including the ones that have written letters to the courts, have you read any of these letters? These insurrectionists writing these apology letters to the courts, they all say the same thing. We were just carrying out the president's wishes. We were just doing what we were told. We were misled. We were told the election was a fraud. We were told that there was discrepancies. We didn't know. But we thought if the president said it, it must be true. And unfortunately, that's really the mantra of a republic. If the president says it, it must be true. Well, Nixon did a lot of lying, as we know, because there were tapes. And Trump's done a lot of lying, because we know, because there's tapes. There's tapes. I mean, aside from Princess Diana when she was alive, Donald Trump must be the most photographed man on the planet. Every interview, everything is disseminated, and everything is analyzed, and everything is reconstructed, and everything is considered. I don't know why, because the guy just makes stuff up, and yet we kind of seem to hang on every word. And then, of course, this delay of the military, the National Guard. There is now a memo that is circulating, that Christopher Wray wrote, that is circulating, that says that the National Guard will not be required to respond on January 6th. And any response that they have should be to protect Trump supporters. That's now been put out there. And now, of course, we have all these text messages that were sent to Mark Meadows, the chief of staff at the time, saying, get Trump to call it off. The only reason they were saying get Trump to call it off is because they knew that Trump called it on. It was Trump's idea. He was thrilled about this. And still, despite all of this, I genuinely think that Donald Trump doesn't realize that what he instigated was illegal. That what he instigated was considered to be fascism. A fascist move, overthrowing a government. Because the moment that election was certified, the government effectively was in transition. So what he was trying to do was overthrow the government. And then, of course, he stopped presidenting. You know about this, don't you? He just effectively stopped presidenting. He went to Mar-a-Lago to sulk and to plan the insurrection, and he did not read a solitary briefing, security briefing, President's Daily Briefing, PDB they call it. Didn't read a single one. So if China or Russia or any of the foes, North Korea, wanted to attack the United States, the president was off duty for 3 weeks. There was no one presidenting. Do you think that Mike Pence was told, by the way, president's not read any of the daily brief, so it's probably a good idea if you have a read? Do you think he was told that? Do you think it would have been a good idea, maybe, Mr. Pence, to have gone public with the fact that there's no one presidenting right now? And then, of course, the Biden transition team kept going public with the fact that they were being blocked by every department. When they were trying to move into the department to transition, they were being blocked. So you really do end up with this very serious scenario now, where there's all this evidence. There was no fraud. The only fraud there was the former president claiming there was fraud. That in itself is fraud. My favorite event, my most favorite event of this entire thing, because I really felt very sad about all of this, was at Four Seasons Total Landscaping. When Rudy Giuliani got up to make a speech, and they thought they'd booked the Four Seasons Hotel. That's what they thought they'd booked. But because of the incompetence of the Trump administration, they accidentally booked the parking lot of Four Seasons Total Landscaping, which was in one of the worst parts of town, between a pawn shop and an off license. And, there was a fire extinguisher on the wall behind him and a fire blanket or some kind of hose affair. They had a little PA system. And Rudy Giuliani got up to talk about election fraud at Four Seasons Total Landscaping. I mean, it might have been the funniest thing I've ever seen. I cried with laughter because it was so obvious what had gone wrong. It was so obvious that you would never choose Four Seasons Total Landscaping through choice. You would never make that choice. You would choose the Four Seasons Hotel. And somewhere, something got lost in translation. And so this poor guy is having to stand up He was sweating like a pig. Do you remember? He had black dye running down his face. And as he's talking about election fraud, they call the election for Biden whilst he's making this speech. And somebody, one of the members of the press, calls out to Giuliani whilst he's talking garbage up there and goes, they just called it for Biden. And he's like, sorry, what? Oh, they did? In the middle of the speech. So, like, it wasn't enough to be at this ridiculous location with these henchmen standing behind, you know, like a very tall guy. It turned out he was a former criminal. They kind of worked out who all these people were. The whole thing was like it was just a gigantic, embarrassing sideshow. I was going to use a different word instead of sideshow, but you know what I'm going for. It was a sideshow. And really, you know, that's what this entire administration was like. From the way it was run and operated, both internally and externally, Four Seasons Total Landscaping was really the culmination of 4 years of incompetence. And it was very funny. And tragic at the same time. The memes, though. Oh, the memes. I mean, you could not make it up. It was brilliant. And of course, Four Seasons Total Landscaping, actually, they capitalized on this. They started selling merchandise. They sold out of merchandise. It was brilliant. They were doing t-shirts and sweatshirts and hats and, you know. And some people were suggesting that they should book Four Seasons Total Landscaping again, you know, for like next year. It was quite something. By the way, you can now leave a review for Backchannel. All you have to do is go to backchannel.tv. If you hit the leave a review button, not only can you send us your thoughts on the show that way, but you can leave us suggestions for upcoming segments. So, you know, this is truly user-generated. If you want to be part of Backchannel as an ideas person, or just to say, you know, how much you love your pal Hal, then you can do that at backchannel.tv. I want to talk about the truck driving in Colorado. This is a very interesting story. Rogel Aguela Maderos, Colorado's lorry driver's sentence, has sparked uproar. And we'll take a look at this story in a little bit more detail. It's very interesting to me. He got a 110-year sentence, this guy, for he crashed his vehicle. It killed 4 people. 110 years. And it says a juror who convicted the truck driver over the deadly crash in 2019 has revealed he cried my eyes out after learning the driver had been sentenced to 110 years in prison. The juror said that while he found the 26-year-old guilty on 27 charges, he believed the lengthy sentence is not right, and it's 100-fold of what it should be. I mean, they've effectively pinned this. They've pinned this on the driver, haven't they? That's kind of what they've done. The company that runs the trucking firm, you know, basically walked away from this scot-free. And this guy is a very sweet man. He's a very sweet man. His name is Rogel Aguela Maderos, a semi-truck driver who was sentenced to 110 years in prison in Colorado on the 13th of December. So just like a week ago. Convicted of 27 counts stemming from a fatal 2019 accident that killed 4 people along Interstate 70. A petition urging Colorado's governor to grant him, he was 23 at the time, a sentence commutation or clemency has been signed by more than 4.2 million people. In addition to the hashtag No Trucks to Colorado is trending on TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook, as many truckers say they will not travel through Colorado as a result of what they believe to be an extreme sentence. Me and my brother have decided that we have joined the protest and are not getting any loads out to Colorado or until Rogel gets justice, because 110 years is ridiculous. The company should be held accountable, said one trucker on Twitter. The governor said, "We are aware of this issue, reviewing each clemency application individually," the governor's office said. Well, let's take a look at this in some more detail, because it said the judge said mandatory minimum sentencing law gave him no choice over the 110-year sentence. Bruce Jones. It's effectively a life sentence. The truck rammed into stopped traffic in April 2019. The traffic was already stopped. And apparently he told investigators at the time that his brakes had failed on his truck and he was hauling lumber. And he noticed his truck was traveling 85 miles an hour before the crash. Prosecutors said he could have used a runaway truck ramp, but instead rammed into the stopped traffic, causing the 28-vehicle crash. In addition to the 4 who died, 6 people were wounded, and fire began to engulf the crash scene, triggering explosions and a fire so intense that it melted the roadway and metal off of cars. I mean, this is... I wish I knew more about it because I'd be able to have an opinion. I really don't like giving an opinion unless I kind of know the case. But it says that Colorado's mandatory minimum sentencing laws force the lengthy sentence, requiring him to issue consecutive sentences. I will state that if I had the discretion, it would not be my sentence, the judge said. In all victim impact statements I read, I did not glean from them someone saying he should be in prison for the rest of his life or he should never ever get out. There was forgiveness reflected in those statements, but I also desire that he be punished and serve time in prison. The guy's brakes failed. You know, this is the issue. Apparently he's wishing that he died instead of the victims. He's been so remorseful, this kid. Just a kid. The national president of LULAC, a Latino civil rights organization, said the sentence was not just and blamed the district attorney, Alexis King, for filing so many charges. As a result of the number of charges filed, the consecutive terms added up to the life sentence. He said this case is so egregious. It boggles the mind that here we are in 2021 and somebody who was not intoxicated, not on drugs, is in an accident, the brakes went out, and yet here's the Latino driver. He gets charged, convicted, and given 110 years of prison on his first offense. Is it racism? Is there a racist angle to this, that the driver is Latino? Is there a reason why the DA had to file so many charges? This is a question for Alexis King, the DA. King said, in part, we initiated plea negotiations, but Mr. Aguila Medeiros declined to consider anything other than a traffic ticket. The facts and consequences of his decisions that day were extraordinary enough to support pursuing first-degree assault charges. Ethically, we do not, nor can we support pursuing first-degree assault. Ethically, we do not, nor can we pick and choose between victims in charging. Wow. It says the jury's thoughtful verdict reflects the strength of the evidence presented. Sorry, I sneezed momentarily then, and I just muted myself in time. The DA has defended the prosecution. I mean, look, if you know that the outcome is a potential life sentence, and yet you file all these charges in order to get that life sentence, then surely you have some predetermined prejudice. The jury's thoughtful verdict reflects the strength of the evidence presented and recognizes the harm caused to the victims. The sentence, which our office requested the minimum for, is within the purview of the court and reflects the judgment of the legislature. Just as the law mandates this outcome, it also provides future opportunity to revisit the sentence, and we will again pursue an appropriate outcome if that opportunity arises after consulting with the victims and survivors and receiving their input. I don't know. You got more than 4.2 million people signing the petition to get him a sentence commutation. The guy says he cries all the time over the crash. He says, I think about it, I have flashbacks. He said he tried to avoid the vehicles. My life is not a happy life. It's a very sad life because 4 people died, he said. He also showed great remorse. I'm not a criminal. I'm not a murderer. I'm not a killer. When I look at my charges, we're talking about a murderer, which is not me. I've never thought about hurting anybody in my entire life. He kept, while weeping, he said, I lost my brakes. The truck drivers, they know it's a hard moment. You can't do anything. You can't do anything. John's joined us. John's saying yes. Thank you, John. In Florida, yes. You can say more than yes, and then I'll know a little bit more about what you're agreeing to. Are you agreeing to his sentence, or are you agreeing to his sentence being commuted? It says the judge will have the ability to review the sentence. The guy's a Cuban immigrant who lived in Texas. He had no prior criminal record. His lawyer said that in court, he valued his life in America. The victims' families spoke out at the truckers' sentencing. The victims were Doyle Harrison, William Bailey, Miguel and Angel Lamas Arellano, and Stanley Politano. They say it's been difficult. Sometimes it feels like being half a person. That was Kathleen Harrison, whose husband Doyle died in the crash. To me, this is a case about the brakes on a truck. This is a case about the manufacturer of the truck. This is a case about the technology here. I don't know much about these types of trucks, but I presume if it was one that had a separate cab and a separate load, if he was carrying this huge load, then arguably the connection, when you see those cables between the cab and the load, that those are the cables that connect the brakes. And I guess that if they're just cables, then they must be hydraulic brakes. And it is a known thing that trucks' brakes can fail. And that's why they build these truck stops, these ramps to slow these trucks down that have a problem with momentum because they're so heavy. It's crazy. And yet Carl Rittenhouse, a white person who executes 2 people and shoots a third, gets off despite killing these people and is celebrated at a hero's welcome. There was a far-right conference on the weekend, and Carl Rittenhouse was the guest of honor. Came on stage to a rock star's welcome. Literally, people were screaming with joy, celebrating the fact that he is a legal killer, that he knows how to kill people and get away with it, to get away with murder. And they were celebrating him with like pyrotechnics and lights, and the production values were very high. And this kid's just like, he's 18 years of age, and he's just like, wow, taking it all in. If you really were the person that Carl Rittenhouse claims to be, a Black Lives Matter supporter, and that you'd killed 2 people in cold blood and you really felt bad about that, you wouldn't even attend these events. You wouldn't even do an interview with Tucker Carlson on Fox. You wouldn't even be part of this movement. You would disappear into the shadows. And this is really the evidence that, this is really the evidence, all the evidence that I need to know that he's not the blue-eyed boy he claims to be. Thank you for your messages. Thank you, everybody. I mean, we're inundated with messages this morning. Thank you. It's just non-stop. So keep talking, backchannel.tv to message, or you can talk to your Echo device. Just wake it up and say the magic word. Say, followed by your message. That's how you do it. I'm Anthony Davis. You've got me for another 10 minutes, and then your pal Hal will be here, bringing you his version of the day's events and showing you what's going on across the world and beyond. In the last few minutes of the show, shall we talk about this rather interesting story about the invention of the Christmas lights? I think, just to end on a high rather than the death of 4 people in a truck crash, I think it would be nicer just to end in a more positive fashion. This is the good news story. We might as well take advantage of it. So who invented the Christmas lights? Well, the answer is, of course, Thomas Edison. Because he invented the light bulb, didn't he? So Christmas lighting really was his domain. He was like, hands off my bulbs, everybody. I've got this, he said. The first illuminated Christmas tree was shown off by one of Edison's employees to reporters who visited his Manhattan house in 1882. Electric lights were very costly at first and required the services of a trained electrician. While when the cost of electric lights became affordable, their use quickly spread as they were much safer than candles. Yeah, I forgot they used to put candles in Christmas trees. What are you, nuts? You sure they didn't put candles in the Christmas tree outside the Fox News Square in Manhattan? Maybe. Anyway, like so many things electrical, the history of electric Christmas lights begins with Thomas Edison. He invented the incandescent bulb the previous year, 1879. So in 1880, it was the Christmas season, he hung strings of electric lights outside his laboratory in Menlo Park, New Jersey. Isn't that wonderful? I do love a happy story. There's nothing bad about this story. An article in the New York Times on the December 21st, 1880 described a visit by officials from the New York City government to Edison's laboratory in Menlo Park. The walk from the train station to Edison's building was lined with electric lamps, illuminated by 290 light bulbs, which cast a soft and mellow light on all sides. Isn't that cute? Super cute. It says here, the first use of electric Christmas lighting was by Thomas Edison in 1880. And it said, it doesn't appear from the article that Edison intended the lights to be associated with Christmas. He was hosting a holiday dinner for the delegation from New York, and the novel lighting seemed to fit in with the holiday mood. Interesting. Up to that time, it was common to illuminate Christmas trees with small candles, which could, of course, be dangerous. So in 1882, an employee of Edison put on a show with electric lights that was fully intended to establish the practical application of electricity to the celebration of Christmas. I mean, I knew it would be practical. Practicality really is at the heart of everything we should do. It says Johnson rigged up his name was Edward Johnson. He said he rigged up a Christmas tree with electrical lights, and in typical style for the Edison companies, he solicited coverage in the press. An 1882 dispatch in the Detroit Post and Tribune about a visit to Johnson's house in New York City may have been the first news coverage of electric Christmas lights. A month later, a magazine of the time, Electrical World, also reported on Johnson's tree. Their item called it the handsomest Christmas tree in the United States. And 2 years later, the New York Times sent a reporter to Johnson's house on the east side of Manhattan. An astoundingly detailed story appeared in the edition of the New York Times on the 27th of December, 1884. It was headlined, "A Brilliant Christmas Tree, How an Electrician Amused His Children." It says, a pretty as well A pretty as well as novel Christmas tree was shown to a few friends by Mr. E.H. Johnson, president of the Edison Company for Electric Lighting, last evening in his residence. I love the fact that they would just post his address. Number 136 East 36th Street. They think nothing of posting the address. They only stopped doing that about 30 years ago. They'd always write in the local newspaper where somebody lived. The tree was lighted by electricity, and children never beheld a brighter tree or one more highly coloured than the children of Mr. Johnson, when the current was turned on and the tree began to revolve. Mr. Johnson had been experimenting with house lighting by electricity for some time, and he determined that his children should have a novel Christmas tree. It was about 6 foot high, dazzled persons entering the room. 120 lights on the tree, with globes of different colours, while the light tinsel work and usual adornment of Christmas trees appeared to their best advantage in illuminating the tree. I tell you something about Christmas tree lights. This is very important. Please bear this in mind. Whoever invented the Christmas tree lights, where if one bulb goes, they all go, is a bad person. And I wonder if that was, came from the Edison Company, because I was so determined not to have to play that game this year of searching through the Christmas lights to find which bulb was the one that was, faulty and had caused the rest to fuse, that I purchased some LED Christmas lights this year, which were actually no more expensive. And the great thing about LED Christmas lights is that they don't suffer from this Christmas light problem. LED is one of the greatest discoveries in lighting, isn't it? Conceptually, in terms of the quality of the light, but also the fact that the energy is very low. So what we used to put a 60-watt bulb in, the equivalent of a 60-watt bulb now is anything between 8, 9, 10, 11 watts. And it's amazing. And they dim now as well. When LEDs first came out, they couldn't dim them. Now they can dim them. The only person that didn't like the LED bulb, the low-energy bulb, was Donald Trump. Do you remember? He reversed an EPA requirement, the Environmental Protection Association. He reversed their plan to ban incandescent lamps, because he said that the new lamps made him look orange. He actually said that out loud. The new bulbs make him look orange. And I just thought, you're doing a very good job of looking orange all by yourself. But don't blame the bulbs. So Donald Trump was responsible for putting the bulbs back on sale. Back on sale. It makes no sense to me that you would reverse an entire, because there was Obama that got rid of the incandescent bulbs. So Trump basically brings them back, claiming that he doesn't want to have low energy bulbs. Hi, Davey. Thanks for joining us from Texas. Nice to know you're part of the show. I just like the idea that, because I love a Christmas tree. I'm very proud of my Christmas tree. I bought a Christmas tree for life, one of these fake ones. First time I've ever had a fake one. Always had a real tree. Got a fake tree. The strapline on it was so convincing, even Santa would believe it. And it is very realistic. Oh, wow, you can rent a tree in England and then you give it back to them and then they replant it. That is amazing. What a very good idea. Now I got a Chinese plastic tree, which is definitely going to see me good for at least a few years, because the cost of a real tree was so high, and I think cutting them down was a terrible mistake. Listen, it's just about time for me to go, but thank you very much for spending your morning with me and with, Thomas Edison and the Christmas tree and the Insurrection and the trucker and the newspapers, and all of the things we've talked about this morning, I feel like we've done a lot of good chat. I'm going to come back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. here on the West Coast. But you have yourself a really good Wednesday. Stay with Backchannel for your pal Hal. He's next. Bye for now.